Margie, yeah. leaves. I think that goes till December. So we're still picking up leaves. They're starting on the far end, they're coming this way. So if you haven't been picked up yet, they will get you. Went and told you today, make sure everybody do that. On Todd's behalf, everybody got his paperwork. Dawn has done the pre-treatment program thing here, and she sent it off. Dawn, you done a great job. I know you're out there somewhere. I read it. I think Jody read it too, didn't you? So thank you. Vinny, do you have anything to say while you're here?
My report.
All right, we'll start off with Sherry.
Just thank everyone that helped with the Halloween. We took care of over 1,400 individuals downtown. We gave out over 600 hot dogs, 5 gallons of bean soup, 5 gallons of chili, 10 dozen cornbread muffins, and over 3,800 pieces of candy through Halloween, and we went through it all in about an hour's time. We had a great turnout, and people were there way until after the time for Halloween. So thank all those that helped make it happen. As I have informed council prior, the theme for Christmas is going to be Frozen, and I will have packets in each council's box by the end of the week with details of what I would like to have happen for this year's parade. And one of the things I want to institute this year is doing an ugly sweater contest. I think that'll be a lot of fun, and a lot of people will get great enjoyment out of that.
Any questions for Sherry? No? All right.
Why are the apartments not coming through?
We will meet individually.
Okay. I've been noticing a lot of out-of-town calls, out of the cops going out of town on calls. I know last week there was one, the cops were out of town on a, I don't know what they were doing, but we didn't have anybody here for the ambulance.
Weird statutes, I don't.
I can have to be, I need a little bit more information than that.
I was on third.
Okay, a little bit more information, I don't, I have to take a look at that up.
I believe there was an out-of-town chase going on out 330.
Okay,
And our officers were all out there, and there was
Yeah,
something
our
happening
that was
in
our-
town, and there was no one to come.
that was our officer initiated that, yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's true.
Anything else?
Code enforcement officer. How's it?
We just now finished it, I think it was finished up this week with it. So we have to do everything. Anything else? You got it? No? Oh. I didn't get anything, so. All right. Mr. Duckett.
All right, Mayor and Council, we have two ordinances on the agenda this evening. This first one is second reading and consideration for adoption. This is ordinance 2015-157.01, an ordinance of the City of Falmouth in Pendleton County, Kentucky, amending Chapter 72 of the Falmouth Code of Ordinances by establishing the Falmouth Parking Citation Enforcement Board and related code provisions in order to elect to enforce parking ordinances as civil violations pursuant to procedure set forth in KRS 82.600 through 82.640. As indicated, this ordinance tracks the statutes in the Kentucky statute book 82.600 through 82.640. The first section on page 1 of 7 sets up the Parking Citation Enforcement Board. Over on the next page, section 72.50 outlines exactly what has to be in a citation to follow this procedure, all the information that's provided to the person that's given the citation. 72.55 and 60 outlines what a person can do to respond to the citation or appeal the citation and ask for a hearing. The rest of the sections relate to impoundment of vehicles. If people are a habitual offender, what happens if the vehicle is abandoned, and so on. The last section on page 7 is provide for a lien for fines and other charges if people do not pay the fines. So that is the title and summary, second reading for the ordinance. It's up to council's pleasure. You can adopt this ordinance by motion.
I seen where it has one person, the parking citation enforcement board on B, has
decide to do that, you can amend the ordinance before you adopt it. That would not be a substantial change since it was discussed last time. That would be all right.
Yeah, no, I'll do the rest of it.
So down your change, and that's it.
How does this ordinance differ from our original ordinance in the book?
The original ordinance in the book is what I would call very bare bones. It just sets up the procedure that the city can adopt fines and citations, and basically that's all. It doesn't provide an appeal provision, and so it doesn't have a lot of the things that the statute would allow. This would bring it into.
And because of that old ordinance and it wasn't done properly, shouldn't people be reimbursed their money?
No, I would not say that it was done improperly. It's just the statutes now allow for it to go a lot farther. The ordinance that we have in the book now is very common. Not all cities have gone beyond that, but recently many cities have since the statutes have been amended. There's nothing wrong with the ordinance the way it is. It's just very bare bones.
But there was no appeal process to any of the citations
No.
whatsoever.
No.
No.
And see, and that was the issue, that people didn't know the process. They just knew that they created or got towed or a warrant issued for their arrest.
That's right, and that is perfectly legal, but like I say, most cities are feeling that that's not quite fair to their citizens, and that they want to go further and provide this full complement of rights that the law now allows.
Does the law have to allow for due process? Because there was no due process allowed in that.
No, there was no due process on the tickets.
And when these tickets were first, when they were issued, there was the code, it was already stated that there should be a code enforcement board already in place. No one had been appointed to them. That's how they were supposed to be able to appeal, correct?
I wouldn't go that far and say that.
There was, you did pass for a code enforcement board.
You do have a code enforcement board, but the parking ordinance doesn't say that it's subject to the code enforcement. It could have.
The excessive days, is that calendar days, business days?
Which section?
Well, it's like a 72.55 response to the citation.
Yeah, it would be 7 calendar days unless otherwise specified. And that came right out of the statute, so I would interpret that to be 7 calendar days.
So all this, that they have 7 days to appeal it, will be on the tickets, correct?
Yes. Yeah, if you look at 72.50, paragraph B5, it says a statement of the options provided in the Falmouth Code of Ordinances for responding to a citation and the procedures necessary to exercise these options. So what was just asked is correct, that you would have 7 days.
How much money did, the city get from the parking tickets?
Total? I'm not for sure, maybe, what would you say, it's not even that much, I mean, yeah, but without looking, I don't wanna say, maybe $1,000? Maybe, I mean, I don't know without, I don't really wanna put that on record without going looking at the files to see each month. I mean, you all had that report, I seen that Vinny does, where it says the citations.
There were 34 citations issued, with $25 a citation.
Yeah,
That's like 845, 850,
yeah, so it's
825.
high on the thousand, if that's
Not total.
accurate.
They've not written any citations in October.
And then I would factor in maybe a couple of them were late, so they paid $50 if they were late, so there was only a couple on that. So,
I just, on the other ones, I just, because nobody, really knew the process unless they attended the council meeting of the 7 days and, the time that they had to appeal it.
If you all adopt this ordinance, the police will need to redesign the citation to comply with the statute and flesh it out beyond the bare bones that they have to have.
I want to make a motion to reimburse everybody back their money.
I'll second that motion.
We voted.
And we, yeah,
Wait a minute, let's get clarification, how far back are you going to go with that?
When they started these. Because the due process, and that's not right to the citizens.
When did that start? You mean like under this police chief?
Yeah, when it was,
Like July.
July when they started being issued, and they were being issued, now all of a sudden we stopped issuing them. And now we come up with all these changes. And I just don't think it's right to the citizens that we can charge money when I don't know necessarily if we followed proper protocol and all this and followed the rules and stuff in the past.
So are we to assume that all of these people didn't know they were in violation?
no.
They're parking?
They didn't have a right to appeal it, and we were supposed to have a code enforcement board. That ordinance was passed.
So, would you say this fiscal year then, which began July 1, 2015?
Yeah, whatever, no, this, yeah, this July, yes.
That should be specified.
2015, yeah.
so let me ask you a question, so it's not against the law for what they've done?
No.
Before?
No.
Because if you go downtown to Cincinnati, Newport, you park on the side of the street that you're supposed to be parked on.
I have no idea what their laws are there. I think what council is saying is they want to fix the ordinance, and then they'll go back and make retribution this fiscal year by making reimbursements.
So have we been unfair to the people who got to it?
If you vote yes on this motion, I think implicit in that is you're saying that we have been unfair.
Nobody knows, nobody knew.
It's not really necessarily the way I knew there was not a proper appeal process. That's what it was. There was an ordinance put in place that there was supposed to be a code enforcement board. There was supposed to be people appointed to a code enforcement board, and there wasn't. And that's not fair to have not had an appeal process.
Yes.
That may be true, but people aren't allowed to park anyway.
It hadn't been enforced
in the past.
Right, we haven't had any enforcement for the last 8 years, to be true.
I thought it was in the newspaper that it was gonna be enforced.
And they were issuing tickets prior to that stuff. They were issuing tickets and citing people prior to what was going in the paper. Cause they were issuing tickets in July, and in the Outlook in August. The eighth, I believe.
Another alternative, if that, if council doesn't like that, you could make a motion, instead of automatically reimbursing them, you could have the city put out a notice that they could now appeal under the new ordinance.
The ones dated back since,
Right, since July.
now that'd be fair, if they want. To me, that makes more sense than, refunding money. Personal opinion.
There's a difference, and I like this myself on how to park. If you park in a parking spot and you're in front of your house, and you're on your gravel or blacktop, that's one thing. If you park gravel and road, you park the wrong way. Even I didn't know that. I found that out myself.
But if you're on your own property, you're not parked along, whichever way.
If you're in your parking spot, in front of your house, like in front of your house, that would be parked the wrong way. But if you had a driveway and you pull up like in front of my house, it's gravel, but then if you're on the road, you're parked the wrong way. I just learned that myself, so.
Mayor, according to the rule of order, there was a motion made by a council member who had the floor. I heard a second. And it's been discussed, somebody should call the question.
And if we do pass it, I just need to know, some people work from out of town. They pay this bill and they're gone. I have no way to track these people down to give them their money back. So are we gonna, can we do something in the paper to say, anyone that's been issued a citation, you can come to City Hall to do your, I don't know how to track down some people. If you live around the city limits, it's not gonna be
I
a
don't think it
problem.
would be necessarily
some
where you
people-
track them down. I think it's just where if you put something in the paper and if people wanted to come in, they felt like they were done wrong, then they could come in, they would give it first.
Well, that's your second, suggestion, right?
Well, I wasn't really making a suggestion, I was just floating another alternative.
He
Because
said
it's-
not the appeal.
Yeah,
If you just-
I'll go along with that, that's fine.
If you just automatically refund, you're basically saying that the person wasn't
Right.
in violation of the parking ordinance.
We have a motion to the contrary on the floor, right?
There is a motion and a second right now to reimburse everyone who received a citation and paid a fine back to July 1, 2015 for parking.
To give back the money,
To give back the money,
To
that's
give
what
back
we're
the
talking about now.
to give back the money, yes.
Okay. Need a vote?
That's just,
They're still talking, so I.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
that motion means we're gonna try to contact everyone.
And give them their money back.
How about
Me?
Mhm.
No.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, 3 and 3. I like Randy's idea. I really did, I like Randy's idea to appeal
We
it.
can't contact all these people, she just said that.
Right.
But I think that I would go along with the second suggestion.
That motion
That
fails
would give them a
because it's
lot.
tied. Chief, do you have information on the citations, like license plate numbers, things like that, that can be, so we can notify these people that they have the right to appeal?
Yeah, their addresses and everything is on the page.
Yes, we can.
The majority, yeah.
I move that we, give all the people a right to appeal. Ticket that was given to us.
That really.
I mean, I can send a letter to what's on the ticket and see if they respond that way.
and then it would appeal to the court.
So that doesn't already get.
There's not an order, but it has to be in order.
Before you go on with that, though, the same clarification, back to July 1, 2015.
Right.
So that's the motion, I didn't hear a second.
I second it.
Second, okay, I'm sorry.
Keep voting yes.
Well,
This is just to give them the opportunity to appeal,
Yeah.
correct? Not just to volunteer, if they run the ad and come in to be reimbursed, right?
yep.
Well, you're gonna run an ad
Right,
one way or the other, I voted yes.
right.
I'll go with yeah.
Yes, sir. That's why we're here.
This side voted on.
Yeah, they're both.
Okay, yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll, all right.
Now there's a second reading on the floor for adoption of the ordinance. I don't think that there was a motion made to adopt it. There was some discussion about changing 72.45B to more than one person. You could do that all in one motion if you like, or the more appropriate way to do it would be to amend that section and then a motion to approve the ordinance as amended.
Whatever, there's a three on the board, right? Show me the motion there.
I'll make a motion tonight to amend the ordinance to, instead of one individual being on the board, to three.
Roll call, Ms. Overton.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, the 20 persons appointed, will council approve those?
Yes, they have to come through.
The way that the statute is set up,
Say it on here.
no, the way that the
Oh,
statute is set up is just, it's a mayor appointment, it's not a city official. So you would have to amend the ordinance further to make that
What
requirement.
on like council approval, huh?
KRS does not require it. It doesn't say you can't do it, it's just,
Don't we approve, don't we have to vote on any of the other boards?
Yeah.
Well, yes.
so our amendment would be change it to 3 and make it appointed by the mayor and approved by council.
Yes.
Yes.
Is that, did the motioner and the second agree with that section?
Yes.
Yes.
Then you're ready to vote.
Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yes.
yes, cross boards.
Okay.
All right.
Now the appropriate motion would be to approve the ordinance as amended.
I think that motion, I have you wrong.
Make that motion.
I'll say that.
Over here, yes?
Yes.
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 All right, now we're good to go. Number 2.
Okay, this next ordinance is for first reading only for tonight. I heard this mentioned early. Dawn is sitting in the back. I've not met her before, but we've worked on the telephone and by email to get this ordinance together. We have, let me go ahead and read the title and then I'll explain it a little further. This is ordinance number 2015-72.01D, an ordinance of the city of Falmouth in Pendleton County, Kentucky, amending chapter 50 of the Falmouth Code of Ordinances by repealing section 50.15 therein, ordinances 72.01A-210, 2010, and 2014-72.01C, and replacing them with the provisions of this ordinance in order to establish a new sewer use ordinance that complies with current Kentucky law and regulations. That's the title. By further summary, we do have a rather extensive sewer use ordinance that has been put together over the years here in Falmouth for the sewage and the sewage treatment and collection facilities and so on. As with other bodies of law, and especially relating to environmental issues, the law has changed and the regulations following the law has changed since we have those previous ordinances. And the city has been under some pressure to update our ordinance. Dawn has been working with the Division of Water and has worked out the provisions that you find. It ended up in my computer as 54 pages of updates. And as indicated in the title, instead of trying to go in and patch what we had, we're throwing out what we had and we're adopting the new one. It has been approved by the state. They're actually having a public hearing on December the 3rd. So we're timing this ordinance, so we're doing first reading tonight. They'll have their public hearing on the 3rd. If there are no required changes that come out of that public hearing, we'll do second reading at the December meeting and adopt this ordinance so that it's in place for you to review. So that's first reading, no action required by council tonight.
I have to ask, when we do, like, you know, revise the ordinances and stuff, that we get them prior to the council meeting so that we can look
Yes.
over them.
We will definitely start that, but it's a little hectic this
Yeah, which I understand, that's no problem, I was just
Yes.
making that suggestion, it's kind of like, get everything ready in 5 minutes.
All right, discussion the language of the livestock ordinance. This was tabled from last month. You have to decide whether or not you want to change the language, pass it as is.
Mayor, I got, the information that I have here. Our minister possibly pigs considered livestock pets. It says for the purpose of USDA animal disease surveillance, response, and control activities, as well as our export requirements, potbelly pigs are classified as swine, which are considered livestock. So with this information that I have,
Is that published information? Who's that from?
me,
Well, you know, you can find anything on the internet.
tell me about it. Yeah, tell me about it. So I make a motion the ordinance stays as is. But if the pig gets to come home, I'll back him 100%.
Is there a legal definition that you can give us of livestock?
The legal definition that we have now is the one that's in the ordinance. I think it's a little thin. This is a hotbed issue all across the country. There are probably as many definitions of livestock as there are different types of animals. Many of the USD definition obviously would include a potbelly pig. There are definitions floated out there though, and there are judges who are saying that you can't eat Vietnamese potbelly pigs, and therefore they're used as pets, and they're pets. So the city actually, you all can follow whatever definition you want. The USDA definition would be very similar to the one that we have already. I think it's legally defensible if you want to leave it that way. If you want to tinker with it, in other words, it really comes down to, do you want to allow people to have potbelly pigs in their home and in your yard if they keep it contained? If you do, I can direct our language to do that.
Our ordinance says that any animal not, from the United States or native to the United States is considered an exotic animal. So, it says here, it shall be unlawful to possess or harbor any wild or exotic animal in the city limits. But then again, that's kind of a gray area. What are you gonna do about parakeets and parrots and, they're not, you know, native to the United States.
I was always under the impression when I worked for USDA that your definition of livestock was something that if you were either selling to make money, profit off of, or you were raising it for consumption, that's considered livestock. I don't believe that anyone's gonna slaughter a potbelly pig, and that's more or less a pet. There's also issues with, that we have students keep even that I know of that have a potbelly pig or an animal like that for therapeutic reasons.
We have a case like that in Falmouth, and it's important that she has it.
It is very important. So,
But if you open it up for the potbelly pigs, then we have to open it up for chickens, then we have to open it up for cows.
The chickens would be considered actual livestock.
What?
you're selling eggs.
Yeah, you're selling
And what if you
eggs.
start breeding the potbelly pigs? Are they considered back to livestock then if you're selling them? After you breed them? Because you,
Well, you sell puppies.
right, it's the same thing. If you let them in or what, they can bring them and sell them. If you make
Potbelly pig would be shown against my girls in the livestock class at the North American or State Fair or anywhere like that. They're not considered livestock where they show against those animals.
But if you make exceptions for one, how are we gonna rule out exceptions for
Well,
others?
could they go along with the code enforcement officer that we have hired, or if we have hired that have,
Well, there is room in here for a code enforcement officer to get a permit
right,
from him.
right,
That, for
I thought
instance,
that
the little
was a-
girl we're talking about,
Right.
you know, she needs.
she needs that,
trust.
she needs that animal,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say.
Hire her.
Well, they're service animals anyway, they put them in a different category.
Yeah,
That would be a service animal. So,
they could probably have a doctor's statement
yeah,
stating
they could verify
she
that.
needs this animal,
She has, she has.
and she has it.
She has.
I've always given the opinion if it's gonna be a service animal or therapeutic animal, that you have to have both the doctor's certificate for the patient and a certificate for the animal. And Chief,
She has.
does that run afoul of the way that you interpreted this ordinance when you gave? us-
Service animal, in my opinion, I agree with you, that's a different level. I mean, that's something that we can't, you just, I wouldn't mess with that at all.
That's not
I
okay.
mean, that's a service animal. And if they have the documentation, like you said, we don't need to touch that, so that child needs that.
So even though it otherwise may be classified by the ordinance as livestock, you're not gonna enforce it that way?
No, not as long as there's a service animal, it could be, and it has documentation.
Yeah.
Maybe if something like that could be added to the ordinance. That might be,
Except for service.
yes, that would be one of the exceptions.
Yeah. I agree with that.
So you don't agree with that?
So let me ask you a question on this, I'm pretty sure that it's probably not the people that come to us last time, probably not the only people that have kids in this room. So, I don't know how that's all gonna be handled, but
Individually as it comes about, I guess. This came up because one of them got loose, right? We didn't know.
They both have.
They both got loose. So
So,
we reserve the right to look into a case if we find there's somebody harboring that, yeah.
but I like what Randy said too about getting the permit,
Yeah.
because that, I thought that left room in that ordinance, when we had that.
Let's get into that.
It should say the same.
For the,
For the little girl.
Together. I don't think it's written in
it's
there.
not, it's sort of, it's a gray area,
Right.
it's a very gray area.
Maybe if we define it more with an exception.
Code, well, I don't know.
Because it's sort of a gray area, it sort of keeps it.
Maybe you could do that like a form of motion, and that way they we do the working for service.
Service animal or pet. Have the proper paperwork.
Okay, there was a motion made to leave it as is, I don't think it was seconded. So now we've had some discussion that we might want to modify the ordinance a little bit to make an exception, like where it says livestock, we would say, except animals otherwise classified as livestock that are legitimate service or therapeutic animals for a medical purpose with proper documentation or something like that.
That sounds good.
Good.
If,
Maybe be approved on a case by case, so because, I mean, there's all different kinds of therapeutic animals.
And that's what I said, you know, I don't know exactly what's outlined with this new code enforcement officer, but thought maybe, you know, that could be something that could be sort of handled by them as well.
Yeah, he can judge that, yeah, because we do, you know, one on person, somebody's backyard, yeah.
how about if we add on and registered with the city, that way we know where they are.
That's it.
That's it. That's what you said. I thought that.
Do you want me to draft that language and bring it back next month?
That would be better.
You want to go ahead and make a motion to do a first reading tonight?
We can make the first reading tonight.
Do we have a consensus there?
Make a motion to do the first reading tonight?
Yeah.
Well, I did.
Okay. Second. And who voted yes? Okay. So the first reading would be ordinance next under an ordinance of the city of Falmouth in Middleton County, Kentucky, amending chapter 90 of the city code of ordinances, specifically section 90.01, definition of livestock, to add to the end of the definition of livestock, provided, however, that a social service or therapeutic animal for medical purposes with the proper documentation that is registered with the city shall not be classified as livestock. So that would be the first reading. I'll have that typed up and send it to you.
All right, now we'll move on to new business. We need to discuss the sale of the police property, the hammer, and the pizza factory. And what we have to do is surplus this.
What'd you say?
We have to surplus it.
Surplus.
Who's gonna buy the police farm? Or why?
Has there been interest in a flea farm or any of the property
Yes.
that we've mentioned here?
Yes, all three of them.
Let me explain that, Mayor. The city has real estate, such as the other personal property we did last month, that we no longer use. It's either redundant or the original purpose that the city acquired the property is no longer there. So the steps to get rid of it, the first step would be to declare it to be surplus property. The city would then solicit bids for the sale of the property. We can't just set a price and sell it to an insider, so to speak. Somebody asked, is somebody interested in buying the property? It's good to know that, but we just can't make a side deal with somebody who says they will buy it. So we have to at least float it out there to get bids on it. Usually the way that's done is an advertisement is put in the paper to solicit bids for it. Then once we get the bids, we can either accept the best bid or we can reject them all and then go to a, so to speak, listing. The first step would be to declare those properties surplus, and you can do that
Can
tonight.
you add a reserve, because I think there's our butt off of the quick ones,
Right.
and, you know, that's what I'm worried that, we're, you know, you're not gonna be able to have a choice in, or a decision on how much we're getting out of these properties, I'm gonna go upside down on these properties.
And he said, reject all.
Yeah, you can reject all bids. It probably would be a good idea to have appraisal of each property also, so you know going in what would
We
be.
had
the
a
issue.
first done when we first took it over,
Oh,
or
I won't
on
do
the
it.
paper. We owned that in, four, was it Marks?
If it was over a year or two, I would
It's
say,
been at least 3 or 4.
get that appraisal updated. You know, you're dealing with public trust here, public property. You want to make sure you do a good job for the citizens. Get the right amount of money for them.
So we didn't need a motion?
We're paying interest, we're not, we're losing.
Does anybody here disagree that we need to get rid of all three of those properties?
I have reservation, more so on the flea farm, because I'm looking at the city of Falmouth, and we've all dealt with the floodplain and the flood area, and you're looking at different, you have, you know, I'm scared that once we maybe need to build a new firehouse, or we need to, you know, police department, they're gonna make us build or want us to build something that's outside the floodplain. That is the only piece of property that we have that is outside that floodplain. Otherwise, everything is, if they wouldn't, and I think it'll probably come to that. If not sooner than later, but, you know, that's my only reservation about letting go on that flea farm, because that's the only piece of property we have that's outside the floodplain.
But if you're worth paying $35,000 your interest on it.
Where
Because,
are we gonna go?
well, you could always buy a piece of
What?
property and then annex it as city property later, after you made a deal.
The reason I asked if there was consensus for all three, and we probably ought to take them separately when you decide whether or not to surplus them, instead of looking.
And that was something I just wanna throw out there, and I've said that since I've been on council, because this has been tossed around and tossed around and tossed around about the flea farm. But that is the only piece of property that we have that is not in the flood. It's, and if you look down the road, needing other buildings and stuff like that,
How much property is out there?
it should be, I mean, to have,
Huh?
They should.
Okay,
It's right at.
we do that and, you know, like split it up, keep half, sell that, I don't know. Option. Cause it's something, you know, you just never know.
Well, there's always properties for sale, believe you me.
oh,
Maybe
I know
not
that.
at your price, but
Well,
it's
right,
for sale.
but that's just a thought that, you know,
I understand.
Well, we got lots of empty buildings out on 27 there. So there is some property around.
Too, I mean,
I
that's.
just like to have some kind of, proof, you know, like some kind of, if somebody was to, you know, buy it, that we approve of that, and the developer.
You can't let them, you can't go for $100,000, you guys have to leave, you know.
Yeah.
And it could be that some business would end up and buy it to really enhance, be good for the economy here. I wouldn't want to say no to that.
No.
Right, and you have jobs, you have everything.
Absolutely.
I see both sides.
So do we wanna start with the pizza factory first, if we wanna surplus it?
Whoa,
Or
I
just
thought
not
that
in-
was, voted on. Jody, did you want to vote on that, on the pizza factory?
for what?
To declare it surplus.
You know, is that supposed to go to somebody or do something with it, or?
Taylor, she was supposed to think so, that's not one.
I didn't know if there was a previous vote on this pizza factory, that's what I was thinking. Okay.
That's what the church was gonna, yeah, the church
Okay,
was,
yeah.
was gonna use that for the, clinic or the, what
Dr.
ended.
Colbert's clinic,
That's already,
they were gonna do that initially there, at other property, they didn't have to do anything to became available, or was available.
Well, even if we do declare it surplus property, we don't have to sell it.
That's right.
We can reject it.
We can do that.
I move we declare the pizza factory as surplus property.
Any second?
I'll second it.
Yep.
Yes, yes.
Alright. Then we'll go behind Hammer Strength.
Was that a yes on everybody?
I'm sorry.
Huh?
Was
Yeah.
that a yes on?
Yeah.
Available.
Yeah.
You didn't hear from me,
I think it's 40. Am I right, 40, I think, my name? Is that right?
39 to 40, like 40, plus or minus.
Right,
Around 40.
that's what the old shooting range was.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
That was the old shooting range.
Yeah. Behind there, yeah.
It was all the ambulance. For that, you did that, and then, any other thing? One second. All right, sorry, Ernie.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, all right. Now says Maggie. Now back to the police.
I'll make a motion. I think it's a surplus.
Okay, need a second,
I'll second.
okay? Okay, yes, across the board, all right. Now we'll move on to the next one. KB, we sent through the KMEA that Terry was on and Ramona. We're gonna put Chrissy on, and now we need to replace Terry. And I talked to Susan, since Chrissy and Susan work hand in hand in there and they know what's going on in the office. I asked her if she would do it, she said yes. So, if you all good, get a motion for us, to Susan coming on board, nobody has it. Nobody has it.
No, we don't have a motion.
Okay, can I get a second?
Yeah.
Somebody say
Yes.
Yeah, I made a motion.
Yes.
yes. We got it. He's confused me, I don't know where he's at tonight, he's confused me. Our next thing is an ad for the Christmas book, which is this little book right here that goes in the paper. They come to the office. I wanted to pass through everybody to see if we'd like to have an ad in the paper for $110. It'll be a little something like this. We can design our own little thing, but it won't have everybody else's name on it, it won't have ours on it.
And no pictures.
And no pictures. You know how I got that picture thing. So I need a motion to spend $110 for the outlook and for the little book.
I can't vote. Yeah,
Okay,
I,
all right,
it's still a little bit, even though I
okay.
resigned from the outlook,
You're just gonna stay like, okay.
yeah, I'm
So-
not gonna.
So you're
It's
not
a
gonna
conflict, yeah.
abstain, you're gonna
Yeah.
recuse yourself,
Recuse
not to be
myself,
counted
yeah.
with the vote.
Yeah.
I move,
Okay, can I have a second?
Yeah.
All right. Yes,
Yes.
never mind.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, let's bring Ruth Ann up. Come on up to our crowd.
Who is
Ruth
it?
Ann McCord?
Mary Ann McCord.
Mary Ann, I'm sorry. It says Ruth Ann.
I'm sorry, I'm Mary Ann McCord.
Okay. Mary Ann, Ruth Ann, welcome.
I was like, change my name or something.
Yeah, it's still me. Thank you for bringing me tonight. I am, again, Mary Ann McCord. I am the liaison and logistics officer for the search and rescue, group in Pendleton County. And I'm here tonight to ask you to please reconsider your decision to not fund search and rescue. When I was.
We've never made a decision not to do that.
Oh, Never good. made a decision. Good. Well, then I'm still here tonight. Maybe we can work on this.
We just don't have a budget. So, that's the thing, is we just don't have a budget. But
Budget
nobody
we
has
have,
ever
you're in
said
there.
anything.
And yeah, if we're going, the budget we have, you're in there, so. Good. I just wanted to, say a few things. Being in your shoes, I know it's very difficult. If I was sitting on outside and somebody was coming to me or texting me, which I did to all of you at least a couple of times, asking me for money, I would have to ask, who are you and why do you think you're deserving? And the reason, and I thought about that, and I thought, well, I'll go back to some of my training. There is an acronym called LIP that we use when we are discussing whether or not we're going to, or how we're going to arrange objectives in an emergency. L is life safety, I is infrastructure, P is property. Search and rescue is all up there in life safety. I'll just go with me, I was saved by almost every member of the emergency management community when I was in Iraq in 2005. It was very bad when it was a head-on collision. Of course, the police were out there, and there was a sheriff's deputy out there, and EMS was out there. Both fire departments were out there, and they didn't have enough personnel because all of us were entrapped in our vehicles. They called in search and rescue, and with their ability to work, search and rescue helped to save 3 lives. We're better trained to do this than anybody else in this community, and I see firefighters and policemen, and please don't shoot me in the back while I'm sitting here. But policemen are trained to look at a crime scene. We don't care if they committed a crime, we just want to find them alive.
firefighters are trained in fire science. They go, they study the blaze, they study secondary issues, and they want to put that out and have everybody just happy. Search and rescue gets an entirely different type of training. We just look for the little clues that help us find everybody alive. We are volunteers. We want to put Pendleton County Search and Rescue on the map, and we can do this. We are bringing in our rope operations instructor in December. His name is Bill Matney. Private sponsor, we're getting this sponsored by one of the businesses in town. It's with the agreement that their people can come in and be trained as well. We have 2 road checks on our team. But the flat out fact of the matter is we're all volunteers, we all have jobs, and we all may not be able to go to one. So we all have to know how to rig something up to get somebody up the hill. When Teresa Rick was, and I'm assuming most of you know, but that's been a pretty popular story, was injured and was missing overnight. Search and rescue was called out and found her. And she would have had an easier trip up the hill, and the people up the hill pulling on rope would have had an easier time if we had that training. But everything costs money, guys. We can't survive without you. And that's pretty much all I have to say. I wanted to finish with this story. Actually, it's not a story. Teresa Rick's daughter wrote this. And it says, and I can get through this, I've read it 3 times and I tear up every time, so 14-year-olds and middle schoolers get to me, that's what I used to do. It says exactly 1 year. I remember waking up at 5 in the morning to take a shower before school. I remember Lisa, which is a next door neighbor, sitting on the couch with my grandma talking, actually whispering. I gave a confused look to them, and then seeing my grandma cry afterwards. I brushed it off, thinking nothing about it. Getting in the shower and coming out at 5:25, I got out and saw the creature and finally asked what was wrong. I remember them sitting me down and calling my brother in the room. Mamaw telling us that my mom and little brother were missing. I got directly up and walked to my room. I remember trying with every ounce of my body, holding in my tears, till I got to my room and collapsed on my knees crying. I remember finally getting enough strength to put my head against my bed. I remember saying 1,000 prayers that morning. I remember my desperate attempts of calling my mom's phone a million times and leaving her messages. I remember thinking that my little brother would be alive because I knew my mom would die before she let anything happen to any of her kids, and getting so mad just seconds later and throwing everything off my dresser in bed, thinking about how I wouldn't have a mom to go to, fight with, and be my best friend during my teenage years when I'll need her the most to remind me of who I am. I remember thinking about how much I'd love to trade places with my little brother and getting mad because he might be dead and he hasn't fallen in love. He wouldn't get to graduate. He wouldn't get his driver's license. He didn't get to even live his life. I remember screaming into my pillow out of frustration, standing up and crying, leaning against my wardrobe with my arm and punching it with the underside of my hand till it was bruised and I could no longer feel it, then sliding down it. Then Lisa coming to check on me and then saying I needed to be strong for my grandma and making a comment along the lines of I knew you couldn't handle it. And walking to check on Christian. I got up and getting dressed for school. I go out to get ready to get on the bus. Mamaw telling me I don't have to go to school, and I kept saying I wanted to go to school because I had a test I can't miss. Maybe a crappy excuse, but I kept thinking I could get away from it at school, which I later found out everyone already knew. I remember my Aunt Karen walking in the front door as I was walking over. I remember everyone trying to talk me out of it. Finally seeing the bus headlights, I walk out, and not even 3 steps in the grass, I finally start crying again after holding it in for a good 20 minutes. I remember sitting down with my friend, and 2 seconds after the bus started moving, her saying, "I'm so sorry about your mom and brother." I started bawling my eyes out and remember asking a million questions about how she knew and how many people did know, and and why I didn't know sooner. I remember having a straight face walking into school with another friend and walking with her to put her volleyball bag in the locker room and finally getting to cry in the hall. Then another friend running up to me telling me they found my mom, and Hannah calling me, telling me, and me saying I know and hanging up quick. Terrified of her or Jake being dead, I remember keeping a straight face till I walked through the doors. I remember the bell ringing, and my friend holding my hand and trying to keep me sane while we were both crying. I remember getting exactly 5 square blocks before the water fountain, holding my breath to keep me from crying and screaming, then hearing the intercom call my name to the front office and breaking down. I remember crying to her saying, I don't want to go. Getting in my locker just to close it, and Mrs. Coleman walking over telling me they called my names and telling her I didn't want to go. Then some lady standing on the other side of me telling me to come with her, and me grabbing my friend's hand and making her walk with me. I remember losing my breath and my heart sinking because I was scared of them telling me these 2 people I loved so dearly have died. Walking so slow, regretting every step I took. Aunt Karen picked me up and we went over to the 911 center and thinking, this is it. The preacher is here and he's going to say a prayer after Mike tells us my mom is dead. They explained what happened, and I remember Sarah, Mom's friend, taking me and went to go get gas. I remember us running and then driving past where my mom's wrecked, and as soon as I saw it, I remember being terrified and just breaking and it finally sinking in that this is real, and I'm not going to wake up and it be some crazy messed up dream. I remember everyone staring at me. When I started to run to the helicopter, some guy pulling me back and just yelling at me that I wanted to see my mom. And then Sarah telling me that it's okay and that we'll meet them there. Running to her car, racing to the hospital, sitting in the waiting room for hours and sitting next to this woman covered in blood. I talked to her for a while, and her thanking me for talking to her when they said we could see my mom. Papa and I went in first, and all I remember, my mom saying she thought she was going to die, and her saying sorry and seeing her cry. And let me tell you, no one ever wants to see the strongest person they know say those things and see them in that big of a mess. I remember her asking about Jake. Soon after seeing her, I remember wearing her ring, well, holding it all day, and soon going to see Jake. I remember getting mad because they made me wait. Then walking in his room after a while and crying as soon as I laid eyes on him. His eyes were so swollen along with his lip and his hands from the IVs. I remember holding his hands and him eating and opening his eyes up only for me and telling me he loved me. I can tell you every single detail of that day. I can even tell you that we passed 457 cars, 249 trucks, and 28 semis on our way to the hospital. I also counted 38 people running too. 7 were wearing purple. Point of all this is, you never know what's going to happen. Never take anyone for granted because the day you do could be the day you lose them. I love you, Mom, and I'm so glad to still have you in my life. I don't know what I'd do without you. This is from Teresa Rick herself. This volunteer group saved our lives that day, and I owe them everything. Because the reason I cannot be here tonight is because I'm spending the night at Butler Methodist Church at Jake's last archery lesson of the season. It's family night. I hope with all my heart that you, as City Council, can find it in your hearts to donate money to this group of women and men. The county needs this organization so that there can be more success stories just like ours. They need training and equipment to make that possible, so please help them out. Thank you for your time. And I do thank you for your time. We really appreciate it that we are on the budget when it gets passed. Because as we know, this is the true heart of search and rescue. We're all volunteers. We all do it out of the need to help someone else. But we need the money to keep going. Sure.
Search and rescue, you mentioned, is it the volunteer organization that you?
Pendleton County Search and Rescue is a volunteer organization, and we search for missing juveniles, older persons, anytime we're called out. And we stay searching for them until we either find them or have evidence that they have gotten in a vehicle.
Pardon my ignorance, I was just asking the question because,
Oh.
in other words, you're not part of local government agency, you're sort of
We
standing.
work under the auspices of the Emergency Management Organization, but we are completely volunteer.
Okay.
Yes, we are not paid, not in any sense.
Once we do get to a budget, I'm gonna give a recommendation that the city put a little bit of strings attached, because we can't just donate money to a private agency. What we can do though is dedicate money, and pay for things that helps carry out your mission if it, supports our citizens and helps our citizens. In other words, if you need a piece of equipment, the city can buy it for you. If they allocate $5,000 or whatever it is in the budget, they can't just give it to you and turn it loose. But what they can do is buy things for you, they can pay for the training, as long as it's for a public purpose that's gonna help the citizens.
Actually, one of the reasons I came before you tonight is because while we can ask for grant, we filed for a grant from Kentucky Emergency Management, asking for about $12,000 in equipment. Equipment, yes, we have training would be nice, but most of the time Kentucky Emergency Management can help us with that too. What we need is operating capital. We need to have tires put on the vehicles, they need maintenance. There are active 911 is an expense where we have members who are just through search and rescue. That has to be paid for them because we are volunteer. We don't ask for that.
Very clearly public purpose, we'll work out the details. Do you have a specific number in mind that you want the city to allocate?
I haven't heard any specific numbers, and for that, I would suggest that you talk to Chief Darren Brown. He would be the one who would most likely be able to give you a better idea of what that would be.
What was the last donation, does anyone remember that? We gave last, 3,000.
Yes, and actually, that was what Darren Brown, I should say Chief Brown, said to me. He mentioned the $3,000 mark. And we don't look on it as a donation, we look on it as support because we are available 24/7 to every resident in Pendleton County, whether they're in the city of Falmouth, in the city of Butler, or in the outlying areas. And I do mean 24/7.
Let me ask you a question, do you all ever go to like Boone County or anything like that if they call you over? I'm just curious.
We will go over and do mutual aid. Boone County very rarely calls us, but we did have a occasion to go over to Brushing County not too long ago when the two young gentlemen had gone camping or fishing or something and they drowned. We were not able to save their lives, but we were able to help find the two young men and bring them home to their families so that they could at least bury them. And we do work quite closely with other areas. When the two young children at Red River Gorge were found missing, and I know that story hit a lot of papers, actually one member of our team was called because he was a rope tack, and that's what they were looking for, was rope tack. So we get calls from all over the state, and the more we prepare ourselves to be what I call putting us on the map, to give us the rope operations training. Not everybody can be a rope tech guys, because that's where you go down the side of the mountain and hang upside down and put people in harnesses and things like that. And quite frankly, you'll never see me doing that. But we need we wouldn't go actually and ask for basic search and rescue, but very few of those classes ever come to Pendleton County, and that's one of our goals. We want to bring more training to Pendleton County so that not only search and rescue, but everybody under the auspices of first responders can benefit. Law enforcement, paramedics, CERTs, firefighters, you name it, it would all be for them. And that's what we want to do. That's what we're looking at. Maybe twice a year, bringing in really good quality training so that we don't always travel out. When we travel out, we not only give up our time, we also give up money. When I schedule a class, I know, sure as I'm sitting here, that if it's not in the summer, I will get a call to sub that day. It's always happened. Don't ask me why. Something about Falmouth.
Kelly's Law,
Yeah, there you go.
Murphy's Law.
I give up $100 every time that happens. It's not just the gas and the lunch and the motel expenses. We not only take away time from our families, we take away more paychecks, which does end at that time.
Doing everything.
Okay, so and we're willing to do it. And I'm sitting here tonight because that night, when so many people came out to save me, that was the start, my start of community service in being a first responder. Okay? We want to do this, but we can only do it with money. The $3,000 that was given last year would go a very long way to keeping us completely independent and not having to come back to the city and ask them for help again. Can I answer anything else? I mean, we can talk
You
about.
also get, I mean, the county fiscal court also donates money and stuff to you as well in support of the search and rescue.
I
So it's
not heard
pretty much,
anything about,
you haven't heard anything,
anything about the fiscal court doing that. I can ask,
Okay.
or actually probably more appropriate is somebody ask Chief Brown, although I could ask him and I'm sure he'd tell me, as to whether or not that happens, but no, I
I've
haven't
never
heard
wanted to
anything
see
about
there was
this.
support all the way across the county.
Right. I wouldn't be, unopposed to going and speaking in front of the fiscal court for that matter either. I actually did use a lot of what I had prepared for tonight because you did tell me that when the budget passes, we have some money in there. It's just that putting it in the account is, as a one-time lump sum, guarantees that it goes to the citizens of Pendleton County only, and it stops us from having to come back to city council or fiscal court and having to nickel and dime you every time we need a tire, every time we need a battery, every time oil needs to be replaced, every time we need to get something, some sort of mechanical work done on a vehicle. That money keeps us in operation and keeps you from having to be nickel and dime every time something goes
Is
wrong.
the city of Falmouth the only group that support, the only entity that supports
No,
it?
actually Butler does as well. And I will find out about this whole court, and I would not be unopposed to going to approach them too. This was just my first offer of speaking in front of the group.
And Mayor, and, Mr. Dunford, I think you ought to send a note to the group and explain how the donation works.
We can work that out.
Yes,
You all,
that
you
everyone
make a decision
understands.
of the amount,
Yeah,
and if you want to do it, and then we'll work it out.
because that works a little bit differently than just putting.
Right.
Okay.
And I don't know literally how it was done last year. This is just my first, this is my first year as an officer. And knowing that our goals are set rather high, and that we do want to bring the service to Pendleton County and make sure everybody has the right to call. Mom, when her son doesn't come home from school, she calls in a panic, and he's not really missing, he's down at Johnny's house. He's just mad at mom, so he's gonna hide for a while. We want to help them as well as the older citizen who walks away from a nursing home and is truly in trouble. Is there anything else I can say? Any other questions I can ask? Or you can ask, and I can answer.
Everybody good?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, our next thing is the interim appointment for city council. I'm sorry, for city clerk. I apologize.
Apology accepted.
Thank you. I have gone through several people. I think I have a good interim. I think everybody will be happy with. And it's Chrissy O'Hara. Chrissy will do this until we get an ad in the paper and we pick somebody out that we like and we'll be okay. So I need a motion from you guys to, okay, Chrissy O'Hara to, okay, how about a second?
Second?
What's on your side? Okay,
Yes.
Yes.
all right. How about that? Well, that's it. Before we leave tonight, I want to say, because tomorrow is Veterans Day, I want to thank all the veterans who have served their country. Appreciate each and every one of you that does that. And also too, to the crowd, I hope everybody has a happy Thanksgiving. And we can adjourn anyway.
Can I speak before we adjourn?
Oh, no, go
Can I
ahead.
approach council before we adjourn? Starting 10 months ago, we started an investigation into the city's assets, and particularly, we ended this investigation 2 weeks ago. Today, I'm here before council to address some things that we found. First order of business is a check wrote by Alana Henson and signed by Marianne Shields for the amount of $3,763.50 to the man Ziegler and Schneider, who is now your current city attorney, and I would ask that you refrain from making any statements as it is a conflict of interest that he represented you in or your ethics complaints. Now, the first thing to address is we have an email from Chris Johnson, from member legal service attorney for Kentucky League of Cities, stating that this check is null and void as a council member cannot sign the city's checks. This law is KRS 83A, .130. Delegation of this mayoral duty should be done via an executive order to a subordinate, non-elected officer. If a council member signs a check, someone should challenge the validity of this check. Since this is not within the council's legislative powers, this is a separation of powers issue. Would you like to speak, Councilwoman?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
I know.
I have a check now, if anybody would like to see. You co-sign this because 2 people in your office refused to. As far as I know, neither of you are bonded to even write city checks. Is that correct? You are bonded? Can you tell me the date and time in which you were bonded?
You're the chairman of the meeting. You can't have one.
You don't have an answer for me?
I got a question for you.
Yes.
What is this?
That's what
Who's
I'm
gonna
looking
pay for the attorney fees in the mayor?
Well, the ethics committee doesn't necessarily need an attorney to
Why is
represent a
money even
person.
being brought up?
Money you don't wanna cost the city.
No, this should not even cost the city's money because
That was not supposed to have been done, paid for by an
this
attorney.
document,
paid
this
for
check
by
was
the
mailed.
city. The city wasn't supposed to do it.
This was mailed to Awanda's personal residence. She brought it into the city's office and paid for it with city money. The law clearly states any funds that are paid out of the city have to go for the commonwealth of the city, not to further one personal citizen. Now, I'll let you know that the state auditor and the attorney general, as well as secretary of state, are aware of this. They have been appointed an investigator, which I'm sure they will be here within the next couple of weeks. That is the first order of business.
Excuse me, Mayor, did he request to be put on the agenda?
No, this is not on the agenda.
Yeah, but I have freedom of speech. I'm allowed to speak at any council meeting. And you're not allowed to recommend me from that right.
The law allows citizens to monitor their council. It does not require people to speak. You will speak at the pleasure of the mayor. She chairs the meeting.
Would you like me to continue? No? All right, I'll have you there, so we'll be in touch with you. And you're up the rest of it on channel 19 news tonight?
I'm making a motion.
Oh,
Yeah.